Welcome, Kami community. Welcome to my session and welcome to Kami Connect. Be sure to tweet out your favorite moments from my session by using the hashtag Kami Connect. Let me introduce myself. My name is Steve Martinez. I'm a social science teacher. My master's is in curriculum and instruction with a focus in educational technology. I'm a flipped classroom teacher, and I'm also a Kami hero, and I'm in the middle of my first year of being a Kami hero. I'm super excited to be talking to you today about blended classrooms and how we can take our blended classroom to a new level by using Kami. But first, I'd like to take the time to talk about the type of year we have had. Over the last year, thanks to the pandemic, we've had to teach our students in very different ways. And it has caused unprecedented challenges for teachers, parents, administrators, custodians, the list goes on. And very early on in this year, I really had to ask myself as a teacher the tough questions of how I can be better and how I can reach every learner that I have in my classroom. And the way that I've done that is using Kami, but more specifically, using a digital Kami notebook. And by doing so, it allowed me to create a high level of interactiveness, provide constant assessment and feedback for my students within the notebook, allowed for a high level of collaboration, and ultimately allowed me to scaffold how my students communicate, which has been a big focal point for me during the pandemic. Now, you can create a Kami notebook in a wide range of ways, and there are plenty of resources out there to make this happen. Mostly, you'd find online resources that have digital binders or digital notebooks that are built in the form of a Google slide. Now, I'd like to show you what this looks like. I'm in my Google Drive right now. Here's a Google Slide notebook that I built from the ground up, but you can find a lot of good resources for free online. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the notebook looks like on the Google side of things. And this is a notebook that has the aesthetic of a notebook, has different tabs that are all linked up for me to navigate my way through the notebook. And this is a great notebook. However, I recognized that I really needed the Kami tools to better support my students and better support my entire blended learning environment. So what I'm gonna do is go back into my Google Drive here. I'm gonna right click, open with, and then annotate with Kami. Now, as you can see, this is the exact same notebook, except now it's living inside of Kami. And it's giving me all of the tools and accessibility that Kami has to offer. But more importantly, it's giving my students all the Kami tools that it has to offer. Once I have a notebook built and prepared, I then assign it in my LMS, which in my case would be Schoology. You'll notice that the Kami notebook has all the same tabs and all the same hyperlinks for me to navigate through the entire notebook freely. Now let's take a quick tour here because I'm going to show you a few of the ways that I use the notebook in my classroom and how I promote accessibility and collaboration in my blended learning environment. So first, I'm going to go into my notes area, and good practice is always to give my students a lot of space to take notes and also give them areas where they can ask questions as they are documenting their learning. I dropped a video right here by adding media using the YouTube feature, and it gives my students the ability to pause, stop, reflect, and document their notes. Now, what my students love is that they could take their notes in a variety of different ways. They could go to the text box tool, start typing right into their notebook. Or if they want, they can go to the very top and click on the voice typing, which allows them to speak to the notebook, and the notebook then documents their learning. I am taking notes on the Cold War. The other option that I have is digital inking. So if I go into the draw tool here in Kami, and let's say I have a stylus, I could then document notes by doing some digital inking right here into the notebook. Now, what my students really appreciate about this setup is that they also have the option to take notes on paper the old-fashioned way. And how many of us have had students during this crazy time of distance learning, remote learning, where students were just, hey, I just wish we can go back to normal. My students had a little piece of that by taking notes on paper, taking a picture of it on their computer, and then inserting that picture right here into this Kami notebook. And just to show you, I have a folder here of some notes that a student took. And I'm going to drag my notes right into this Kami notebook. And I could then hover over it and move it. I'm going to make it a little bigger. And boom, we have this hybrid setup of, hey, doing notes the old-fashioned way and still living in a digital environment. What I could do once I see the notes documented right here in the notebook, I could give feedback, I could annotate, and so the US saw socialism taking over. I can document that, maybe draw an arrow over here, maybe give the students some feedback, right? Or have some sort of discussion by using the Kami comment feature and maybe dropping in a voice comment. How do you think this impacted citizens on a social level? Posing that question to the student could then go back and play that comment. And then the student could then drop feedback, maybe answer my question, or maybe we can have dialogue, or maybe finding ways, regardless if we're in the classroom together or not, to collaborate with the content in real time. Now, the other area I'd like to show you is my activity area. Now, the notes is where my students would take notes outside of the classroom, right? But this would be, their activities would be what they're doing inside of the classroom as a flipped classroom teacher. This activity is asking the students to analyze a political cartoon from the Cold War. Now, Kami is great for annotating a text, but I also use it to annotate images. And shout out to all of my history teachers, but how many times do we give a political cartoon to a student, especially a younger student, and they don't really know where to start? Using the Kami tools and building some good instruction and instructional design, we could then scaffold this process by having the students annotate the image and not just the text. And right here, this student circled their confusion, boxed in what they didn't notice right away, drawing lines, making connection to two similar ideas within the cartoon, and highlighting what they felt as the most important part of the cartoon. But what's awesome about this is that I can also have my students create a screen capture comment while they're completing this task. And they can do that by going to comment, going to the screen capture, clicking anywhere on the page, and it will then do a screen capture of them completing this task and make a video for me live in real time. Because for me, it's not about the final product of a task, but rather the journey that the student took to complete that task. And it gives me a lot of information and data as to the thought process of the student. And it also gives me a lot of information in terms of what is being deleted. Maybe a student circled one part of the cartoon and then deleted that particular circle. And I can go back and ask that student, why did you make that change? To have real, authentic conversation about the content. Now, the digital notebook has gone a long ways for me to leverage technology in Kami to better support my students. Now, I noticed very early on in implementing flipped classroom as well as teaching in a blended learning environment that student motivation can be a huge barrier for my students. And the way that I've attempted to address that in the notebook is by utilizing gamification in the notebook itself and across the class. Now, I did this by using the Kami stickers and really utilizing this idea of taking a game design and incorporating that design into a non-game context. That non-game context, in this case, would be my class, would be the notebook, and ultimately my grading practice. So what I did is I took 4 Kami stickers and I replaced those Kami stickers with what would be a traditional letter grade. So I have my impressive sticker, which is that 99%, that well done, 84%, big progress, 69%, and then good effort, that's my 54%. Now, I made sure to have the language right at the top so students can learn the language and what it means relative to mastery. And make sure that I really talk about mastery when teaching my students this process and really redefining or rethinking what it means to get a grade, or in this case, a sticker. Because it can be very discouraging for a student to get an F on an activity, or a D, or sometimes even a C, depending on the student. This changes that because it promotes a culture that is more welcoming, and I can then build in incentives to allow the students to want to collect those impressive stickers or even those well done stickers. To take this a step further, what I've done is I have built a custom grading scale right into my LMS, which is Schoology. And because I create a custom grading scale, it allows me to replace a letter grade or a percentage with what would be that Kami language. So even when they're in Schoology, they don't see a letter, they don't see a number, they see that impressive language or well done or big progress. And it really provides a level of cohesiveness across what's going on in my notebook, to my LMS, and across my entire class. Now, to show you what this looks like in practice within the notebook, I have my grading area right here in my notebook. The students see right away that Kami language that is built into the grading practice. The students document in this table every week their progress and whether or not they're at mastery for their weekly activity, making sure that they have the number of notes necessary to meet a certain grade for that week, documenting the number of successful moments on a project, number of moments of participation, warm-ups, what have you. And this really puts the responsibility and what I consider the ownership of their own learning and their own progress in their own hands. The other thing that I give my students would be a sticker sheet. And this sticker sheet allows them to document their semester, their name, the period, their gamer tag. And they get creative with this, but it allows me to create an anonymous leaderboard to track progress for an entire class and really build in competitive activities amongst each other as students in a given class, or even allowing a competition to exist across 2 different class periods. Now, what could happen is, the student could go and look at a particular activity, complete that activity for the week, and then I would go back and grade it. Now, what this means is I'm not dropping in a letter grade or a percentage necessarily, but what I'm doing is adding in a sticker. And let's say for this particular activity, going back to the political cartoon, I drop in good efforts. Now, mind you that this is not a mastery sticker. So this means that they're not at mastery. On top of giving the sticker, I would also drop in feedback for the student because that's just as important, if not more important, than the sticker itself. So what I could do is I could create a screen capture comment, And by creating my own screen capture comment, I can verbally and also visually give my students feedback, regardless if they're in the classroom or at home. I'm going to click on anyone on the page there, share my screen. Hello, I think you did a really good job, except we can't give you a mastery sticker because you failed to do the last step here of part 1, which is giving an interpretation of the cartoon at the end of the comment. You'll notice that I don't see this in the screen capture comment video that you have, nor do I see it right here underneath the comment. Go back, fix that mistake, give me your interpretation of the cartoon, and I can re-evaluate this. So that's my comment. That's the feedback I gave to my student, as you can see. This video gets saved, and now the student will go back and look at that feedback and hear my voice, see my face, see me modeling some of the missing parts of this activity, and then they'll be able to go back and level up, what I call level up on this activity. So you notice on the sticker sheet, the student would document their initial sticker and then the sticker that they would get once they level up. Now, what the student would do is they would look at this, look at their sticker. They would want to copy the sticker and drop it right into their sticker sheet and document it right here. The student would then go back and look at my feedback, look at my screen capture comment, and then level up and redo the assignment, or in this case, make those modifications and adjustments to allow me to give them a sticker that is at mastery. Because it doesn't matter if the student can't get it the first time. What matters is that the students can make progress and allow for me as their teacher and for them as students to track and monitor their progress over the course of time. So the student would then go back and redo the assignment. I would then delete that initial sticker and give them, let's say they get an impressive sticker. The student would go back, see that they leveled up, right? And a lot of my students get excited about this. They're like, yes, I leveled up, I got a new sticker. They would then copy this image, drop it right here, and now we have proof. We have evidence that mastery is being met, and we also have evidence that students are making progress. And you can do a lot with this. You can create incentives for, if you can level up a certain amount of times a quarter, you get X, Y, or Z. You can use this as a form of currency in your class. And let's say that if they can get a certain amount of impressive stickers, they could get exempted out of the midterm. Or if they collect a certain amount of total mastery stickers, they can cash that in to buy real estate and maybe sit somewhere else in your classroom. Gamification has been a huge asset to me as a teacher while addressing student motivation and building that student self-efficacy. Now, another big piece of my notebook is promoting collaboration across my class. And the way I've done that is by utilizing Kami for digital whiteboarding. Now, for me, I try to be very purposeful with how I design digital whiteboarding in my class. And I always come back to the 4 C's. Does the digital whiteboarding promote critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication? If the digital whiteboarding is doing all 4, I feel that the student outcome is stronger. Now, the way I've done this is build a collaboration space in my LMS, and then take the URL from that space and drop that into the notebook. So let me go into my projects area where students are diving into answering the driving question of how do citizens cope with decisions made by their leaders or governments. Part of answering that question, though, is brainstorming on the content and working as a group and using collaboration to really dive deeper into the content. And this is done through a framework called the 4 Worlds. The 4 Worlds is a framework that was developed by the University of Southern California, Calais. And so let me click on this link right here and show you what this looks like. And this takes me right into an area in my LMS. And I have 4 different groups, so I have 4 different links. Each link is identical. And it gets built right in here into Schoology. Let me show you what this looks like in a full screen, or in a different tab, I should say. So what this is students are in a group. There are 4 students. Each student is assigned a particular world. So they have to analyze, in this case, an excerpt. And this excerpt is a Vietnam soldier writing home to his girlfriend, justifying him being in Vietnam fighting the war. Now, normally I would have students work on this initial part at home. So they would analyze the text independently, jot down what are the factors of their own particular world in their box relative to the excerpt they're analyzing. Jot down those factors. So what about that excerpt, and how does it impact their particular world? Whether it's the political world, economic world, social or cultural worlds. Once the students come back and they meet in their groups, they then discuss and collaborate on how the factors of their world are influenced or relevant or even impacted by another world, and how all 4 worlds are intertwined relative to this one excerpt that we have here. What I can do is I can monitor my students in real time, regardless if they're in the classroom or at home working. I can make my way by clicking next in Schoology and by moving my way and seeing the work and the progress that has been made. Now, this last example here is what a finished product would look like. And as you can see, it can get very messy. Students are utilizing Kami in a wide range of ways. They're drawing connections, and it's not about the messiness, but they're doing this and they're drawing those lines and making those connections in the classroom. And the biggest outcome that I've seen is the types of discussions that are being made while they're making these connections across these worlds. And I've done this on a wide range of topics, ranging from the French Revolution to the Holocaust. And it does promote a high level of critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and it really fosters a type of civil discourse that would not be made possible without the 4 worlds, and certainly not without Kami. The benefits of the Kami notebook, in my view, are huge. It allows me to break down student barriers. Not every student wants to share out loud, and the Kami notebook allows them to communicate verbally, through text, through video, in a wide range of ways that they know directly goes to me and not the entire room. It promotes a high level of accessibility, and we know that Kami promotes a high level of accessibility relative to the numerous amount of ways that the students can work through the content and communicate and collaborate. It also empowers students, and with the gamification and the way that I have integrated the levels of communication and accessibility of the content, it gives the students the ability to say, yes, I can. And lastly, it allows the notebook to really break down the 4 walls of my classroom. I consider this to be a live, living notebook compared to the traditional pen and paper notebook. And it allows me to reach my students, whether they're standing right next to me, or if they're 5 miles from me, or 500 miles away from me. And that is powerful in the sense of how we can leverage Kami and technology to build or redefine our blended learning classrooms. Today, my attempt was not to talk at you, but rather talk with you. I'm curious to know how we're all handling our blended learning classrooms and what type of plans or attempts, or even how we're using Kami at large to prepare for this upcoming school year as we return in probably a more normal learning environment. Please tweet at me at Martinez_edtech about your comments, questions, or general strategies of how you are using Kami in your blended classrooms. Stay safe, and we will talk soon.